Over the past few years, I've probably done about 1,000 plus one-on-ones with 7 and 8 figure business owners running our company Closer.io, which is a multiple 8-figure company doing several million a month. And what I wanted to share with you today is really what's on the screen right now, the common mistakes and insights I've gotten from these one-on-ones, especially recently as we are right now in 2024. So here's a big one, which is how to increase lead quality. So I'm going to cover some little things that you can do that make a big impact, and then also talk about some massive things you can do that really just change the game in and within itself. So if these initial things, you're like, oh, that makes common sense, just wait to the bigger things. So the first thing is with the headline, first line, and banner, what you always have to make sure you do is call out the right person. So if you see my ads before, you're probably familiar with like this ad or some sort of variation from it. So several years ago in 2020, when I first ran this ad, this is crazy. If you see on the screen, it was the exact ad. The only thing I didn't have was this coaches and marketing agencies. That was it, right? It was the same exact ad. I just didn't have that little call out in the first line, and it didn't work at all. It got tons of people we couldn't work with, obviously, but it literally didn't work. I mean, we were getting good call costs, but we were getting insurance agents and all sorts, MLM, all sorts of stuff. All we did was just add that, and it worked. Now, what's really key is a lot of people use dynamic creative, which means like you can do different copy, different video, and different this, and it kind of dynamically does the combinations. What you have to make sure is that between those dynamic creative, any of the combinations that can happen have some form of a call out. I would recommend it being right here, and also potentially in the headline or one or the other. But generally in the first line is really the key. Another thing you can do, so this drives to a landing page, and you can see how descriptive I am with who I want and who I don't want. I'm like, here's who I want, here's who I don't want. If you're not this person, leave this page now. So as you'll see, and you'll see this on the next slide too, you know, Facebook, what they want to do is optimize for a good user experience and only show ads to the people who are relevant, right? Well, if you can show them a certain archetype or a certain avatar of people have a high bounce rate, they're not going to show it to those people as often, right? And so obviously, as you're optimizing for leads or conversions, you want the event that you're sending back, the information you're sending back, to be the actual person you want to attract more of. So it kind of creates a flywheel effect. Now, here's the first question on my application. Are you this person? If not, leave this page now, okay? It's not like, are you this person? It's trying to get them to leave the page. And again, not make it all the way through so that they trigger a conversion event. This is very, very, very key. So those are some little things you can do. Now, these work really good for B2B when essentially, I mean, it can work for B2C too and B2Solopreneur and et cetera, but especially when the people you're working with, it's easy to qualify. Sometimes with B2C, like let's say you're selling a make money online thing and it's like Amazon, it's kind of tough. I mean, you could go for white collar professionals or something like that. But it's kind of tough sometimes to narrow it down. So here's what you could actually do if you're B2C and your lead quality is atrocious, which right now in 2024, man, a lot of B2C offers are really struggling with this. So there's kind of two similar solutions. They come from the same train of thought. So number one is you can change the problem you're solving. Number two is you can change who you're solving it for. Okay, so I'll give you an example, right? Like with B2C, make money stuff, lead quality's kind of been in the gutter. So I have a company that's basically a sales rep certification company. So if people want to learn a skill and be able to get a sales gig and make 6 figures, like it's a course / consultancy program that teaches that, right? So our old messaging for years and years and years was like, hey, here's a high value skill you can learn to where you can go from not being satisfied in whatever you're doing to having, you know, this career and this money and all this stuff. Right? So that's kind of like a broad biz op angle. What I had to shift that to was how to take your sales career to the next level by getting into this new innovative industry. Okay. So I was like, hey, if you're a salesperson and you haven't broken 6 figures, it might not be your sales skills. It might be the opportunity in what you're selling in. So as you can see, I kind of took it from biz op to career op. Okay. I'll give you some more examples later, but you could see I didn't necessarily change the problem I was solving, but I changed who I was solving it for. In a way, I kind of changed the problem I was solving too. Now, what this does is it adds a floor to your market. Now, this is kind of the why below it. So I'll show you this right here. So here's my kindergarten drawing of your market. So imagine this big circle being the TAM, right? So this is everybody who's in your market. And let's say this is everybody who's in your market on Facebook, okay? In the top, you have the highest quality. At the bottom, you have horrible quality, like the deepest, darkest pits of Facebook. So what normally happens is if you go broad and like Make Money Online offers are like the great example of this, but also like if you just help anybody with weight loss or anybody with trauma coaching or anything like that, right? Like B2C broad. What happens is like Facebook's trying to optimize for the lowest cost per conversion for you. Like that's what it's for. Lowest cost per lead, lowest cost per book call. Like that's what you told it to do. Okay. Well, what happens is since you can just since you can basically target anybody who's interested in the problem, you optimize down to the lowest quality. And especially with Make Money Online type offers or course offers or start a business type offers, those also get really bad engagement and bad feedback. Like a lot of people will just instantly will be like, oh my gosh, this is a scam. So your quality score goes down as well, which I also think puts you in a deeper trough of traffic. So a lot of times, like with some of my clients who have been running B2C offers, like I'll hear stuff like, yeah, like literally like, it's not even like we're getting people who are broke, we're getting people who are like homeless or on disability. And it's like, okay, well, like you can't do anything with that, right? So what do? Again, we want to add a floor. Right? So we did this with RCA, which is our sales thing. I already told you about this. So essentially, we went from saying anybody who wants to essentially get in a new career and make money to, okay, if you're a sales rep who, you see the floor here, if you're a sales rep who hasn't broken six figures yet, it might not be your skills, it might be your industry, you might need to get into a new innovative industry. So now, essentially what happens is anybody, the lowest I can get is a salesperson not making any money, right? But I can no longer get people who are homeless or in the darkest, deepest pits of Facebook. So you see how it kind of adds a floor to my TAM here. Like I can't go below this. So I'll give you a great example. This might drive it home a little bit more, but let's say you're somebody who you're placing CFOs for companies. That's a B2B offer. Well, just by the nature of that problem that you're solving, somebody who's like, consumer who has no business, they're not going to reach out to you. Somebody who like is at 10K a month in revenue, they're not even going to reach out to you because they don't need a CFO, right? Like you're automatically, just by the nature of that offer, going to get people usually probably $1 million a year plus. So you see why that's a really, really great offer, because you can run a broad targeting pretty much to all businesses, but they're just not even going to be interested in it unless they're at a certain level. Same thing is if like, if we run an ad that's placing sales directors in companies, well, we're only going to get people who are interested in sales directors and therefore a higher quality tier of client. Like, does this make sense, right? And so you could see how it just adds, this is a version here of adding a floor to your market. So we kind of can't go below this. And so when we implemented this in our B2C offer, what we experienced is we were getting people, homeless, disability, all sorts of stuff, like can't even have we can't sell these people under any circumstance, to like, okay, sure, were we getting like wealthy salespeople on the call? No, but they might have been doing 50, 60 grand a year. They want to get to 100. They haven't been able to break it in the last 10 years. And obviously inflation's rising and, they're feeling the pressure, and they have access to credit. They're resourceful. Like they're people you can have real conversations with. So this made a big difference. Okay. So I'll give you some other examples. I had a client who was make money in IT, it was like become an IT professional. So instead I told him to pivot it to, here's a new opportunity to take your, same thing as I did with my sales thing, as I was like, if you're an IT professional and you're not making six figures, here's a new opportunity to be able to go from 40K a year to 100 or even 200K a year using this, new technique or whatever it is. Let's say it's become a copywriter, right? Again, that's like broad biz op, anybody can do it. So I was like, hey, instead go after writers. So like in the above example, it's like we went after IT professionals. For this one, it's like go after writers, and it's like double your income as a writer. Now, I'm well aware, is a writer a really good market? No, like they're broke too, but at least they're like doing something. They're employed. Like we're talking about like a lot of the issues people run into are getting people who are like, just they're not the type of clients you want to work with. Like the lowest tier of people that you could get through your advertising, right? Which are also the cheapest people, which again, Facebook is optimizing down. So again, another example, I already mentioned this one, we could say need setters, but if we change the problem to needing sales managers, we'll automatically get a higher tier of clients. See how that makes sense? So it's the same thing with like setters to closers to sales managers. It's the same thing if I offer placement for CSMs, I'm going to get people who already have lead generation figured out, are already making money, and now their bottlenecks are in fulfillment. So you can see how, now the issue with that is it's a lower TAM, but you can see how the higher we climb, it's like the better prospects that we get, right? So another issue I always find is creative output. So you probably always heard Alex Hormozi talk about this in his videos, where he talks about people scaling their ads and they're just not making enough content. They're not making enough ads. Well, I found the same thing. Number one theme in my consulting calls, it goes something like this. How many creatives are you testing per month? Like somebody will complain about their ads. Oh, my ads won't scale, whatever. I'll be like, how many creatives are you testing a month? 0 to 5. And I'm like, okay, great. So look, if you're below like $2,000 a day, you really probably just need 3 to 7 good angles. And that's actually, potentially more than what you need, but you don't need that much, right? Is that going to be that important? No, it's really like getting to about $2,000 a day is just offer needs to be right. Media buying needs to be right. You need 3 to 7 good angles. At scale though, your creative velocity needs to go up a lot. And I'll show you back to my kindergarten drawing why. So let's say you have 2 working ads, ad 1 and ad 2. And then this is your TAM, right? Again, same thing. This is like everybody you can get on, let's say, Facebook. Okay. So as you scale, what happens is if like ad number 1 here, okay, if ad number 1, it's getting this little tiny pocket of the audience, like you can see on the screen. Well, what happens is as you scale, it kind of like pushes things out, right? Now, as it pushes things out, if it's a really, really good ad that's highly, highly relevant or has a broader appeal, it'll hold cost per book call. But inevitably, what's always going to happen is that messaging kind of circulates with this amount of people. And then eventually, as you expand, whether through duplicating it or through vertically increasing the budget, your cost per book calls are going to go up, right? So I don't really like to scale this way. The way I like to scale is just through more creative angles and variations. Now, to cover some definitions for a second, an angle is essentially like an entirely new ad concept. So it might speak to a different pain point. It might be an ad shot in a totally different way, whatever. A variation is like a very minor change. So that might be changing the first line of the body copy, changing the headline, changing the banner, changing the color, stuff like that. And so what happens is as we do new creative angles, it's going to hit different pain points. It's going to resonate with different people. They'll be relevant. Like, for instance, we'll do an ad and then I'll take a female on my team and do the same ad. It just resonates with 2 entirely different pockets of the audience. And so now as we're testing more creatives, we're kind of grabbing hold more of different pockets of the audience, and we're scaling our budget while actually maintaining or even decreasing cost per book call, right? So this is really how the cost per book call I pretty much had in the very beginning is the same one I have now, more or less. Have I dealt with some increases? Yeah, for sure. I'm like spending like $8 to $12,000 a day. So I'm not going to get the same as I was spending $1,000 a day. But as you can see, it really is maintained quite well. Now, here's another thing that's really cool. We're going to get into more of an advanced strategy here. So notice how when I was making new ad concepts and variations, they all are kind of still in the same pocket here. They're in the upper left-hand corner, right? Well, this is more of advanced when you're really trying to scale to like multiple 8 figures or even 9 figures. And this is part of my scaling strategy at the moment. Is, again, let's say this is all of my TAM. Well, what I can do is I can either change the problem or change the industry, like we talked about before. So let's say all of my current stuff for our sales recruiting goes to the high ticket industry, coaches, consultants, and agencies. Well, I can take that same messaging and solve the same problem for a different industry that's in SaaS, right? Or a different industry that's in remote medical device sales, or a different industry that is in remote solar. You don't really need to do this until you're probably already at 8 figures and you're really trying to scale further. But another thing I could do is, let's say I didn't want to go by industry, I could also go by problem. So what I could do is I could have a more fully integrated business within the high ticket industry and have certain offers for lead generation, certain offers for setters, certain offers for some other thing, etc. Right? So you can kind of expand that way, which is pretty cool. So that's fancy. Now, what do you actually do? Okay. So our KPI, and this is low, it might actually increase here in a little bit, is 20 new creatives per month per offer, right? So we run multiple different funnels because we kind of are doing this strategy right here. So it's 20 new creatives per month per offer. Now, what's going to happen here is this is actually going to produce 640 possible unique variations. So that sounds like a lot. It's really not. So here's how we do it. We write 20 ads. Now, sometimes I write the ads. I'm really good at copywriting. But I have people on my team who write the ads. You can contract it out to copywriters. The big thing is if you contract it out, you need to make sure you have controls. If you don't have a control, it's tough a lot of times for the average copywriter to create any new winning angles. Because usually what copywriters are going to be a little bit better at is being like, okay, this worked great. And then they can deduce some extension of that that's going to work instead. So you can do this. It could be you or the copywriter, your team or whatever. Write 20 ads, then you film 20 ads. Then you create 4 different headlines and banners and 2 different first line variations for every single ad. Okay. That's going to give you 640 variations. Now, we test this through dynamic creative. So we're still only going to have 20 unique tests, but there's going to be a ton of different variations within each test using dynamic creative. Could we do some sort of crazy advanced testing strategy and like link clicks and all this stuff and individually test all 640? Yeah, but I find this dynamic creative thing is way faster. It works pretty much just as well. So we just do this. So essentially what this does is it gives us 5 new tests a week. Okay. Now for the winning test, what we do is the variations that got the most spend. What we do is we'll duplicate and scale those. And the variations that got no spend, we'll split those out as well. So for instance, in dynamic creative, what's going to happen is you're going to open up what's called the breakdowns tab, and you're going to see like, okay, this combination, like these 2 combinations is what's getting 80% of the spend and driving 80% of the conversions. You can split that out and now test a standalone ad of just that, right? That's going to be a new test. But also, if this winning test worked, and now there's all these variations that didn't get any spend, what we'll do is we'll exclude the ones that worked, and then we'll do a dynamic creative again of all the stuff that didn't spend, because essentially that's going to be a whole new variation. And oftentimes, if the main concept worked, those variations will work as well. Okay. So if you're struggling to write new ads, read Great Leads or read any copywriting book for that matter. And what's going to happen is you're just going to get a ton of ideas literally just by reading the book. Like the one thing with any sort of copywriting and writing in general is the more you input into your brain, whether through reading or listening or whatever, the more that's going to come out. So that's really the creative process. If you do enough research or do enough reading, you'll literally be spitting out new ad angles. Like you'll be like, oh my God, I got to put this down on paper. That's how I do it and how I've been able to be prolific throughout the years. You can also use AdSpy and look at winning Facebook controls or stuff that's gotten the most spend from direct response health and supplement companies. In direct response, especially through paid media, that's who I really think is doing it at the highest level. So I like to look at what they're doing. Now, testing ads properly, another big thing that I've noticed. So I'll have conversations like this all the time. Hey, my ads aren't working. I'll be like, how long has it run and how much have you spent? They'll be like, I launched it last night. And then I'm like, dang it. So here's 3 major rules in order of importance, okay? So the rules I'm going to give you here is really testing call funnels and lead generation funnels, but they'll work really for anything, but it's mainly for that because lead generation is my space. We're selling usually consulting services, agency services, etc. So rule number 1 is you always have to spend 3 to 5x the target KPI. Now, our target KPI is always going to be cost per book call. The next rule is that we run a webinar for 4+ days generally. 4 days for us is generally our cutoff to where we can make a decision. If you run it, like theoretically, you could run 5x KPI in 1 day of budget. The problem with that is like, what if that was a weekend or what if that was a holiday or what if it was a weird day and, you know, it looks like a bad test, but theoretically, if you would have let it run a little bit further, it would have evened out because it does take time to optimize as well as it takes budget. Okay. So the big 2 is that we always do 3 to 5x target KPI. Generally, we always do 4+ days. And then the third one is if we can, we try to optimize for 30 to 50 conversion fires per week per the event that you're optimizing for. But we always do no less than 15, okay, which is 2 a day. Okay. Now 30 to 50, that's just really what helps the algorithm kind of learn properly who you're going after and who you're not. So I'll give you an example. This will kind of drive it home a little bit more. So let's say our lead cost is $100 and our cost per book call cost KPI is $300. Let's also say I'm optimizing for leads. So we'll start with the 30 conversions per campaign per week rule. If my lead cost is 100, that times 30 is 3,000 in weekly spend. If you divide that by 7, it's $428 a day. Now, if we do $428 a day for 4 days, on the 4-day cutoff mark, we'll spend about $1,700. Since my target 3 to 5x TCPA is $900 to $1,500, that's perfect. It's a little bit over, but that's totally fine. I'm going to get a really full, good test out of that. Now, here's what to expect with this. I only cut by day 3 if it's like atrocious, okay? Like for instance, I mean, you know, if you haven't had a call and it's day 3, you can probably cut it. Now, if it's on day 4 is judgment day. Here's the deal. if it's like more than 50% out of KPI, it's probably never going to fall back within KPI. If it's kind of iffy, I would keep it for 1 to 2 more days because it'll still trend down. It's obviously if it's in KPI, we keep it, but also maybe it had a bad first 2 days and a good second 2 days, then I'll also keep it. So if the trend is good, I'll keep it. If it's kind of borderline, I'll also keep it, let it go 1 to 2 more days. And then if it's like really bad, I usually cut. Like if it's above 50% out of KPI or 40% out of KPI, it's probably not going to come down. Now, here's the issues with lower budgets, okay? And in some ways, I'm not saying lower budgets don't work or you can't do them. It's just they have some limitations and you can still do it. It's just fine. But here's the deal. So like the main thing you're going to run into now that you're using these rules is if you're only spending $50 a day on a new campaign or $100 a day on a new campaign, to get that 3 to 5x target KPI, you're going to have to run it for like 10 to 20 days, okay? So what happens is this slows down testing velocity greatly, all right? And then the other thing is too, is if you're running a sales call funnel, you might only get like 1 to 2 calls a week, even if it's in KPI. So that kind of makes it hard to get in a rhythm, you know? So that's testing. Now, moving on to we kind of covered a lot of ad stuff. Moving on to a different topic, I see this all the time, is the wrong backend structure. So the common belief, and it's not necessarily wrong, it's just kind of incomplete, is your backend to solve the future problem created by the initial problem that you solve, right? So in other words, if your front end product solves problem A creates now problem B, and then your backend's positioned to solve problem B. You know, and this kind of makes sense, right? So the common example is like, let's say your front end program or whatever it is, it helps people with lead generation and helps them get to 10K a month. So like common sense is like, okay, my back end should help them with fulfillment and systems and all this stuff, because now lead generation is no longer a problem. My back end needs to be about scaling and systems and fulfillment and all this stuff to take them to 50K a month. Okay. So is that necessarily wrong? I don't want to say it's wrong. I just want to say it's like incomplete and flawed. Okay. So here's why. Let's say your front end promise is to go from 0 to 10K a month. Okay. So I wrote this again, kindergarten drawing. Okay. So here's your front end promise. A to B is getting to 10K a month. So like the common thing is like, okay, man, my back end now is to go from B to C, 10 to 50K a month, working on systems and fulfillment and all this stuff. Now, here's what actually happens, okay? So we go from point A to point B. This is the same program. 0 to 10K a month is the front-end promise. What kind of happens is if you see this like colored bar here, 15% of your clients will get no results, okay? Maybe they just won't take any action or they're, you know, whatever. 35% of your clients will get 1 client. Right? So remember, they were at 0 and they got 1 client. And you know, most likely if they're at 0, it's not like lead generation was just the problem. It's mindset, offers, making sure there's product market fit. And then there's all this you know, they had to launch it, they had to get it working, and then like they got a client. Now, let's say another 35% of your clients get 2 to 4 clients. And then let's say the final 15% do get to the 10K a month. Now, so what most people do is in their mindset, they set it up like I have above here. And then they're like, okay, great. Well, I can only sell now this 15% segment into my backend because those are the only people that qualify. And then when your backend messaging is like, hey, this is all systems fulfillment and scaling and all this stuff to take you from 10 to 50, you basically just excluded 85% of your clients. All right. So with this one, all right, I'm going to give you another example. Let's say that the promise is getting your first client through organic social. All right. This will just drive it home a little bit more. First client through organic social. Now, you might think that's linear, like black or white. Like, okay, if you succeeded, you either got your first client or not. But it's if you actually polled your clients and asked them for feedback, you would get a little bit of a different response. So here's what's actually going to happen. All right. So 20%, let's say, will take no action whatsoever. Another 20% will not even get their first client and really not have much traction, but they'll have major mindset shifts through the coaching and the community. Another 20% will have gotten on social media, started to get engagement, and started to get a following. Another 20% will actually start to generate sales calls. And then your final 20% will get its first client. Hopefully it's more than the final 20%. I'm just giving this, look, it's like this is an example, okay? So many people, let's say like your front ends to get the first client and your back ends to get 10 clients. Now scale to 10 clients a month, or whatever it is. Many people will only view their successful clients as that 20%. And also the only people that are open to upsell. The reality is you're ignoring all of this progress that happens in between. I can tell you from experience of, I don't really run a business that has this promise, but I used to sell for a business that was kind of like this. And I can tell you from experience, there's plenty of people who will come in and they'll be super, super satisfied and super happy and ready for the upsell. And they're only in this yellow or the blue section. Like they're almost right there. Like if it was A to B, look, like this is one client, there's all of this room in between and they made a lot of progress. They're super happy. They love it. They want to continue working with you. But the issue is most people, they're like, no, the back end's only for people who are going from one client to 10 client. And they also are like, oh, well, you weren't successful. And so they disqualify a lot of their client pipeline for some sort of continuity. Hopefully this makes sense. The big thing I'm trying to say here is this other 60% that is not in this 20% will upsell too, because they made progress and they want to continue working with you, okay? So here's the best way to do it, all right? So let's say, again, this is a front-end promise to go from 0 to 10K a month. So your front end, A to B is still 0 to 10K a month. Now your back end, which is B to C, is not trying to help them go from 10 to 50. It's all it is continuing working together on the original front-end promise. And for the few people who already achieved that promise, just expanding their vision. How do you do that? Through events, community, more support, more access, potentially more information for the advanced people. But generally, you don't want to give them more information. I could tell you from having hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of upsell calls, the one thing people do not want, if you're selling like an information product or coaching or anything like this, is they don't want more information. Like they'll be like, oh, I'm not ready for more information. I already have too much information. But what they do want is more help, like more access to you, more events, more community, more support in getting the stuff that they already have on their plate done. And this is why it's so important. Like you don't need to make it this next promise. It's really just a continued engagement, number one. And number two, more intimacy and more access and more support to help them get to the finish line. And then of course you will have some people who are ready to go from 10 to 50 or whatever. And you want to be able to give those support to those people as well, which those people should be easy to upsell. Okay. So this brings me to my second part, which is the proper backend upsell process. I see this mistake all the time as well. So mistake number one, don't call it like a graduation call or like the upsell call. Okay. What's going to happen is look, like your clients are smart. They know you have a backend when they're a client. And a lot of times if they know, oh, this is going to be the upsell call, they're going to get in their head. They're going to start to make a decision. They're going to be like, oh, like maybe I'll be ready for this next year. This will be my goal next year. And you don't even have the opportunity to have a conversation with them about it. So what you want to do is keep this in your regular coaching cadence. Okay. So like, let's say your client success managers meet with your clients once every 2 weeks. The upsell call should just be another regular call that you're having 2 weeks anyways. Now, the second issue I see is having your client success managers actually upsell it. Now, if you're familiar with my company, that's exactly what we do. So it's like, well, why are you telling me to do something different than what you're doing? The thing with me is I'm a sales recruiting and consulting business. So all of my AMs and client success managers are salespeople. They have a really great sales skill set, and a good salesperson can make 15 to 20 grand a month or more in the current market. Well, if these people were previous salespeople and now they're trying to get into coaching, they want to make that or likely more. So I need to build an opportunity, which is going to have to include upselling, to be able to help them generate those commissions. Hopefully you get what I'm saying. With most people, ideally, like let's say your program is just helping somebody dial in their social media or something like that. And all your CSMs are social media experts. Well, they're not going to be good at sales. Okay. So what you want to do instead is have a dedicated back-end closer and then kind of view your CSMs as setters. All right. And then give your CSMs a small commission like you would a setter for anybody that closes, and then give your dedicated back-end closer a bigger commission. Now, is the dedicated back-end closer full-time? No, that's another common misconception. This is not a new hire. Full time, they're at least going to need 60 upsell calls a month, which probably means you're going to be doing like 120 to 150 front end clients a month. So for most people, that's not the case. So who is your dedicated back end closer? Well, at first it should be you to validate the process. I really think it should be you until you get to about 20 to 25 upsell calls a month. And honestly, if it was me, I'd probably wait till like 30 to 35, 40, because even 30 is just like one a day. And I could be doubling my business by taking one call a day if I had a good conversion rate. So, for me, I'm going to take it for a while, and I'm also good at sales, but I would recommend most people take it at least to like 25 a month upsell opportunities. Then when you're ready to hand it off, there's two really ideal options. Is number one, your client success director. If they're good at sales, that's usually your best option because they're kind of viewed as like the head coach. And so for the client, it's like a really cool opportunity to talk to the head coach, etc. You could also do it as your sales manager. The thing is, if you do it as your sales manager, it's a good way for your sales manager to make more money and kind of liquidate their salary. But also, you're going to have to integrate them a little bit more in the fulfillment. Like maybe you have them doing some weekly sales coaching calls or something like that, just so like the client knows who the person is, right? The client success director will probably be more involved, so they'll know who it is, right? Now, the final option is you could have really anybody on your team or like a CSM or something, but somebody who's really good at coaching and sales, do it. But I really like you, sales manager, client success director. That's kind of generally what I want to go for. Now, the benefits of this is it really standardizes the process. So for instance, if you have 40 upsell calls a month, but let's say you have 5 CSMs, that's what? 8, they each have 8 a month. It's going to be hard for them to get in a rhythm, number one. Number two, because the upsell calls are kind of all over the place, it's very hard for you to QC and standardize the process. If all 40 of those opportunities are going to one person, it's very easy to QC that one person, standardize the process, and then invest in them and getting them better so you have overall higher conversions, right? So that is the biggest thing. Now with us, again, because everybody's a salesperson, it just has made sense, but it's just not ideal, It's just much easier to have one person you can invest into because this is going to lead to so much revenue of your business. So you really want this to be dialed, okay? Now the other benefit of this, I already mentioned this, is one of the things that stinks about having middle management. So like if you're the CEO and then you have a client success director, then the CSMs, or you're the CEO, sales manager, and then your sales reps, one of the things that stinks about that middle management is really what you pay them is generally not really revenue generating, right? Like even if it's tied to revenue or profit share in some way, shape, or form, they're digging into your margin. If you have them as your dedicated back-end closer, they'll liquidate all of that and then some. So that's pretty cool as well. So it helps you keep the margins. Now, how you actually do the back-end upsell process, 7 to 14 days before the program ends, what you want to do is have the client hop on with the CSM, again, just in the regular meeting cadence for a regular meeting. You want to have the dedicated back-end closer there. You want to make sure the dedicated back-end closer is positioned as the authority. That's why like your client success director works so well, or you. Right? For you, it's going to be like perfect. You'll have really good show up rates and you'll have much higher conversions because it's you. They're finally talking to you. Okay. Now have the backend closer run the backend sales process. That's also in this YouTube channel. It's like how to upsell or something like that. Maybe we'll link it or throw it up on here. And if it doesn't close, which a lot of times with backend, it doesn't, you want to get a clear follow-up. Okay. So timing is critical. So sometimes you can actually upsell earlier if it's after a big win. Other times, maybe somebody just was kind of dragging a little bit or something didn't go well or you dropped a ball. Sometimes you want to wait 14 to 30 days just for the right time. Like if somebody just had a bad result, you don't want to just be like, well, it's 7 to 14 days before it's over. I'm just going to pitch. And then they're going to be even more mad. So you do kind of want to wait for the right opportunity to when they're going to be open to it. Now, this is like my pet peeve, but another common mistake that I see is downsells. So, should my closers have a downsell for prospects who don't have money? No, let me explain, okay? So, if you see this diagram right here, this is all prospects in your given month, okay? So here in the red, I have 48 people who have never bought anything, 20 people who would have bought a 1K downsell if it was possible, and then 14 people who closed at 10K. So you did 140K revenue. Now I did the math and it's a 20.5% closing rate. Now, in a perfect scenario, right? What happens is like you're seeing this and you're like, well, there's kind of this group of people that could have bought this 1K thing and then maybe would have ascended into the 10K. So like, I could be making a little bit more money this way. In this example, you could maybe add 20 grand a month and then, four of these people eventually ascend. So you're adding 60 grand a month annualized, right? Or, monthly revenue. So that's what you think is going to happen, right? And linearly, it makes sense. Now, here's what actually happens. I can tell you this from my experience as a rep, and then also consulting a bunch of people and even trying this myself and making this mistake. Is okay. So now here's all your prospects in a given month. This is the same, okay? It's the same number of people. I didn't change the number of people, okay? Didn't change the number of people. So you still have 48 who never would have bought anything because they never would have bought anything, right? Now, let's say, and this is very conservative, all right? I'm like, this is probably not going to happen, but let's say all 20 who wouldn't have bought the main thing, but would have been open to a 1K, let's say they all bought. So you got 20K from that. Now what happens is now there's only 8 that bought the 10K. Why is that? Okay, because 6, you can see in the purple, right? You can see in the purple, 6 bought the 1K instead of the 10K because the closer was lazy, the closer didn't think they had money, the closer didn't push, but they wanted to come away with a credit card so you can give them a little pat on the back. Okay, and I only did 6 out of the 14 original. I've seen it as high as 50%. Like people implement this and then all of a sudden 50% of their prospects, instead of buying the full thing, are buying the 1K. So now instead of making, what is this? 140K, you made 106. Okay. So you made 36K revenue and you have to fulfill on a new program. And those 1K buyers, all those new 1K buyers you got, the 26 of them, believe me, they're probably, all your chargebacks will come from that. So let me ask you, is losing 36 grand worth adding a new product line / fulfillment system to your business? Okay. And by the way, if you're like, well, no, it's just a 1K course, it's just modules. You still have to answer customer support tickets, deal with the chargebacks, deal with the it's still a problem. Okay. So obviously no. Now you might be saying, well, what about long-term? Because won't those 1K people ascend and it'll make up the difference? Personal story. And I've viewed this with many, many, many other people, okay? I've downsold, so I had a previous sales job. It was my first sales job. I downsold over 100 people into a 1K product. The front end was 10K. I had at least 100 1K downsells. I want you to take a guess at how many upgraded. It was one. It was one person. And that person defaulted on the 10K. And that was like, I'm really good too at like sales and, otherwise I wouldn't have a multiple 8-figure sales consulting business. Like that was me, like following up and like working this pipeline. I'm telling you, all these people bought the 1K. I could not get in touch with any of them anymore. It was like, they didn't go through it. They didn't do anything. And the other issue is they'll end up charging back or refunding or getting mad because you had a whole conversation with them about this 10K thing. And so they get anchored on all of the support and one-on-one and all the grand things of the 10K. And then they only get this. And even if you tell them, hey, this has no support, believe me, they're just like, hey, well, originally I talked about, this is not what I originally wanted. I wanted this. I shouldn't have done this. And then they just charge back because it's, trying to get on the phone with you is not even worth 1K. They just charge back. So as a wrap up here, look, maybe you could convert from your 1K to your 10K better, like the ascension would be better. I still wouldn't do it because you have to make up significant lost ground from your front end sales. And then honestly, even the numbers I gave in that example in terms of missed sales and down sales achieved, those were very, very bullish. Like I've seen these down sales eat up 50% of sales. Okay. And even if it's just a course, you still have to fulfill. Like, again, these are your worst customers. I already went over this, but a lot of the dots, they're going to email you. They're going to be all your chargebacks. It's a whole thing. Another big reason is many of the people you think are downsells actually aren't downsells. Okay. So you'll be reviewing your call or you'll be talking to your closer and you're like, oh yeah, like this person definitely would have been a downsell, but they're not a downsell. Okay. What I mean by that is let's say somebody only has $4 grand. Okay. Literally $4 grand to their name, no credit. They can't do the full 10K. They can't do a 2Pay, 5K, 5K. So you might be like, well, this person's a downsell qualifier because even if I 3Pay them, they don't have any money for the extra payments. I will tell you this from experience. And this is me selling for several different companies in this space and also my own experience, my own company. You're better off letting that 4K person come in on a 3Pay. So just spending the 4K on the 3Pay, given that they're, not going to be on the street or something like that. I'm giving an example like they have 4K expendable income, okay? You're better off letting that person come in at a 3Pay. So basically they have no money to pay these future payments at all, giving them 30 to 45 days and letting them see what happens. Now, there's two options, okay? The worst thing that's going to happen is, let's say they can't pay the second and the third payment. In almost every situation I've seen of this, you just let them keep the course and the group coaching elements only, which are the most scalable. And they're like super happy. They think you did them the biggest favor in the world. The upside is you would be surprised. Many of these people will find a way to pay it. They just do, because they don't want to discontinue. They really like it. This is giving your product as good. And if it's a money type of thing, like a lot of them will make money. If it's not a money thing, a lot of them just want to, they'll find a way to keep doing the payments. They'll get a credit card, they'll do this, they'll do that, and they'll end up staying and paying all the way. So now, a separate question, but related to downsells. What about downsells for disqualified applications? So if you're running a call funnel, a lot of people, you're disqualifying 80% of people who don't have money or whatever. What about driving those to some sort of downsell? Now, this kind of makes more sense, but look, I've tried it. And the response is just so low, and I've used very, very little sales, okay? Even if it worked to a degree, the effort to reward ratio, in my opinion, just isn't there. Plus, again, okay, maybe I could get 20 grand a month out of this. Is that going to be worth adding a whole new product line and all the complexity and the low upgrade rate and the chargebacks and all this stuff? No. So now, here's what I would do instead. I'd be open to creating a downsell, but market them to a list wide of prospects. So essentially, what I found is, for me, generally, when I'm email marketing my list, all right, most of the sales and the calls I get from my list come within 30 days of somebody being on the list, or 45 days of somebody being on the list. So after that time frame, then you can use your list to start downselling, right? And do it through email. I think that's fine. It's kind of like adding a middle of funnel, but it's like you almost kind of want it with high ticket and consulting. It's almost best to start with bottom of funnel, try to sell them the most premium thing first, and then longer term through list, retargeting, etc. Then move to middle of funnel, top of funnel type of stuff. I know that's kind of backwards, but that's kind of a way to think about that. And so you could do webinars to your list and sell it. You could do just standard low ticket promotions, etc. So another big mistake I see is validating new funnels and processes via cold traffic. So I hear this all the time. We switched, launched, did something new, and now none of our closers are closing. So then I'll say, did you have a core team member or you validate the new thing before rolling it out? And then I just get a blank stare, right? But this is a very common mistake. I've made it too. Basically, the situations I see are typically something like this. You have a 2-call process, you are 2-call close, and you want to swap your entire team to a 1-call close. Or you have a 15-minute to 60-minute call process, like a 15-minute triage to a 60-minute call, and you want to switch it to a 1-call. Another one is you're going from some sort of organic or warmer leads, challenges and launches, to pure cold traffic. Also, big jumps in offer changes. What happens is sales teams get comfortable with the current lead quality, lead archetypes, and the sales process that they have. When you change that up on them, they just discombobulate and forget how to close. Okay, even good people. What you really have to do, and what you need to do instead, is have you or somebody you can really depend on, like a solid closer, solid sales manager, somebody you really trust, validate this new thing. And then once there's an established baseline and proof that it works, then roll it out as a new system to everybody else. Okay. Now, I'm adding a mistake for myself. This is something I've done in the past, and hence why I'm creating this video, is living and dying by ads. So here's the benefit of validating ads. Okay. Very, very scalable. You get evergreen day-to-day sales, no content hamster wheel. You don't have to do launches or challenges or these up and down promotions and all this crap. The dangers is it's just, once you have it, it's so nice compared to, making a bunch of content and all this stuff, that it's super easy to become over reliant on. The costs hurt you more with scale. The lead quality gets worse at scale. And, especially with Facebook or any of these platforms, you're one ban away from not having a business. So what I'm doing in the next 90 days, hopefully I can report back and tell you how it worked, is I've noticed, if you look at all the big training companies in the space, PBD, Cardone, Tony Robbins, ClickFunnels and Russell Brunson, all this stuff, they're very primarily heavily organic and promotion based, right? They have a huge brand, huge list, and then do a series of promotions. Now, some of them run ads, and honestly, most of these ads from all these people, I would say Russell Brunson's are the exception, their ads are terrible, okay? So where does their success come from? And before I actually get to that, their ads are terrible, but look, their ads still work. And the reason their ads still work is, let's say I'm Grant Cardone. I don't think they run good ads. However, their ads work. And their ads might even work better than mine. Why do they work better than mine? Because like if I'm Grant Cardone and I serve you an ad to a cold audience, it might be, on Facebook, it might be like, oh, that's a cold audience. Realistically, that cold audience, that's like the 30th impression they've seen of Grant Cardone. So what happens is the quality of the copy can drop and the conversions can still stay really good to make the ROAS actually work. So that's why brand, it's not an either or type of thinking. Brand can help so much with just helping your ads work better. Like for instance, if you watched a couple of my YouTube videos and then saw one of my ads, you'd probably be way more likely to respond. The issue is I'm not making any YouTube videos until now. So now, again, their success comes from a robust promotional calendar. A lot of them do challenges, front-end events, webinars, events, organic social media, all that stuff. I think that at the end of the day, becoming over-reliant on promotions is a problem too. I've had so many clients who come to work with us and build an evergreen sales team and evergreen funnels. They're like, man, I can't do another challenge. I can't do another launch. I'm so burned out. I'm so tired of doing webinars. So I think where I really want to get to personally is still be primarily evergreen and do some of these front-end promotions when I want to, not just because I have to, or do it really middle of funnel or on the back end. Okay, so like my plan, still use front end to generate a large list, but for lead nurture, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, etc., do a monthly, bi-weekly webinar, whatever cadence makes sense, do a quarterly challenge or a quarterly event or something like that. One of the things I'm really going to do is making sure I'm taking advantage of all of the major holidays. E-commerce, they do this so well. In our industry, we don't do it at all, right? Black Friday, New Year's Eve, Christmas. This might mean creating new products because I don't like giving discounts on your premium stuff, but those new products can be lead generation for your main stuff. Niche YouTube organic like I'm doing right now and so much more. So I'm not trying, like a good way to think about this, I'm not trying to create a new front-end acquisition system. All right, that's a ton of work. Front-end acquisition systems are so hard. What I'm trying to do is get my current one to work even better at scale by building brands so I get that impression effect and just getting more out of my list and more out of everything that I already generate. So that's it for this video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next video.